I started with dear, then crossed it out twice. Dear sounds too tender for a man made of ice. I tried beloved, but it tasted like rust. I tried your real name, but it turned to bitter frost. Pages torn, ink on my fingers, crumpled words on the floor. Every draft sounds like a stranger talking to a locked door. Pages torn, I can't get the angle right, can't find the proper key to unlock the thing I'm feeling without unlocking me. I wrote I'm angry, then I wrote that I'm not. I wrote the whole truth, then I burned every thought. The wastebasket's blooming with paper chrysanthemums, each one a version of the man that I've become. Pages torn, ink on my fingers, crumpled words on the floor. Every draft sounds like a stranger talking to a locked door. Pages torn, I can't get the angle right, can't find the proper key to unlock the thing I'm feeling without unlocking me. Maybe the letter is the tear, and maybe the message is the mess. Maybe the truest thing I've written is the pile of second guess. Pages torn, but I'm not finished. One more draft before the dawn. Sometimes a letter isn't what you send, but what you couldn't get right. The ink stain on my sleeve is the only proof I tried. Pages torn, but the pen has never really died. I rehearsed it on the stairwell, practiced twice beside the door. But the moment hung between us like a coat left on the floor. The coffee getting colder, your eyes already somewhere else. I swallowed every syllable and put them on the shelf. What I meant to say was simple, just a handful of small words, but they tangled in my chest like a sky too full of birds. What I meant to say, I wrote it down instead, folded it like laundry, and hid it under the bed. You were buttoning your jacket, I was staring at the rain. Every ordinary gesture was a slow and quiet train, pulling out of the station with my ticket still in hand. Some departures are so gentle, you don't know where you stand. What I meant to say was simple, just a handful of small words, but they tangled in my chest like a sky too full of birds. What I meant to say, I wrote it down instead, folded it like laundry, and hid it under the bed. There's a language made of almost, made of doorways and of rain, where the truest things are whispered to an empty window pane. What I meant to say, it's simpler now with time. 3 words, a breath, a comma, and then your name in mine. What I meant to say, I'll say to the quiet room, and hope the walls remember what I could not say to you.
I keep rewriting the beginning, as if the opening line could heal the crack I left along the morning we both pretended wasn't real. The sound shaker between us, the toast you cut in half. I should have said it then, before the silence learned to laugh. I'm sorry for the winter I carried through your door. Sorry for the quiet that swallowed up the floor. I folded this apology 100 different ways, but none of them were brave enough to find you through the haze. Your garden's probably blooming now, the one I said I'd tend. I left my fingerprints on promises I didn't know how to mend. The teacup on the counter, the book still turned to page 11. I'm sorry I made ordinary feel less than heaven. I'm sorry for the winter I carried through your door. Sorry for the quiet that swallowed but none of them were brave enough to find you through the haze. Forgiveness is a river. I'm standing on the bank, watching all the things I should have said slowly start to sing. I keep rewriting the beginning. I keep rewriting the beginning. I keep rewriting the beginning.
Hey kid with a borrowed jacket and the shoes a size too big. The world looks like a mountain, but it's just a small stone bridge. You're standing at the window, counting streetlights as they glow. There are things I wish I'd told you before I let you go. Keep the book you found in April. Keep the laugh that bends your knees. Not everything that breaks you is a storm. Some things a breeze. You'll survive the hallway whispers. You'll outlast the longest night. Dear younger me, I'm writing just to tell you you were right. The girl who shares her sandwich will forget your name by spring, but the kindness that she planted will become a lasting thing. The father at the table with the newspaper and tea, he's doing what he can, son, even when it's hard to see. Keep the book you found in April. Keep the laugh that bends your knees. Not everything that breaks you is a storm. Some things a breeze. You'll survive the hallway whispers. You'll outlast the longest night. Dear younger me, I'm writing just to tell you you were right. Time is not a thief. It's a gardener with slow hands, planting what you'll need in the soil you don't understand. So wear the borrowed jacket, let the shoes be slightly wrong. You'll grow into the music, you'll become the song. Dear younger me, this letter doesn't need a stamp or a seal. Just a quiet knowing that you learn to feel.
tangerine light on the balcony rail, your sunburn peeling like a story we told in quarters, never hold, just enough to feel the glory. Salt on our lips from the market plums, sand still hiding in my pages. That summer red like borrowed time, written in the lightest crayon. Summer of us, lemonade and loosened plans, bare feet printing on the pier. We didn't know the calendar was counting what we couldn't hear. Summer of us, pressed between the August leaves, a letter that I keep but never send, because the stamps have faded and the summer doesn't end. Your Polaroid is curling now, the color shifting into amber. I keep it with the ticket stubs and one blue thread I can't remember. We promised nothing, that was wise. We built a castle out of hours, and when September took the tide, we left the windows full of flowers. Summer of us, lemonade and loosened plans, bare feet printing on the pier. We didn't know the calendar was counting what we couldn't hear. Summer of us, pressed between the August leaves, a letter that I keep but never send, because the stamps have faded and the summer doesn't end. Some seasons live in the body long after the weather's gone. I carry ours in the warmth behind my collarbone. Summer of us, I wrote you one last postcard from the bench beside the sea, but the address was our yesterday, and there's no mail to memory.
I held the door and you walked through into the kind of rain that stays. I watched your umbrella disappear down the long end of my gaze. The table still had two of everything, your glass still wearing wine. I sat with all the empty chairs and called the evening mine. You're the letter I keep writing to an address I erased, the one that got away so gently I didn't feel the space, until the room grew wide around me and the music lost its key. You're the verse I can't stop humming in a song that's leaving me. I found your earring by the lamp, a tiny silver crescent moon. I keep it in my pocket now, a souvenir from afternoon. The city rearranged itself, the bench, the bridge, the bakery door. Everything still has your shape, but nothing has you anymore. You're the letter I keep writing to an address I erased, the one that got away so gently I didn't feel the the space until the room grew wide around me and the music lost its key. You're the verse I can't stop humming in a song that's leaving me. Letting go is not a moment, it's a season long and slow. It's learning how to love the echo after the voice has had to go. You're the letter I stopped writing, but I never threw away. Tucked behind the mirror's edge where yesterday still stays. The one that got away, I hope the world is good to you. And if you ever read these lines, just know I meant them true.
You handed me a tissue on the 7 a.m. train. I was trying not to crumble underneath the fluorescent rain. You didn't ask my name or what had split me at the seams. You just sat beside the fracture like a dock beside a stream. Thank you, stranger, for the smallest kind of grace, for not turning up the volume when the world was in my face. I never wrote you properly, just carried you in chalk. A letter to a stranger on a Tuesday morning walk. You wore a yellow raincoat, or maybe it was green. Memory paints in watercolors when the moments in between. You left before my station with a nod, or was it less? But you taught me something quiet about the weight of gentleness. Thank you, stranger, for the smallest kind of grace, for not turning up the volume when the world was in my face. I never wrote you properly, just carried you in chalk. A letter to a stranger on a Tuesday morning walk. We're all just passing platforms, brushing sleeves along the way. But sometimes someone lingers like the warmth inside a day. Thank you, stranger, wherever your train arrived. You gave me something postage could never keep alive. A kindness with no address, a letter with no stamp, just a tissue and a Tuesday, and a small enduring lamp.
The clock has lost its manners. It's that hour with no name, when the radiator whispers and the shadows know your frame. I've poured a glass of something that tastes like telling truth. The pen is warm between my fingers, like it remembers you. At midnight I confess to the paper in the dark that I loved you like a lantern loves a moth that leaves its mark. These words are only brave because the morning isn't here. Midnight makes a coward honest when there's no one left to hear. Your photograph is watching from the shelf beside the books. I've memorized the angle of your unintended looks. The way you held your coffee like a bird inside your hands. Some things I only noticed when I lost the place to land. At midnight I confess to the paper and the dark that I loved you like a lantern loves the moth that leaves its mark. These words are only brave because the morning isn't here. Midnight makes a coward honest when there's no one left to hear. There's a courage in the quiet between the second and the third drink, when the heart stops editing and says the things it thinks. At midnight I confess I fold the letter into four, tuck it in the drawer beside the ones that came before. A stack of midnights, honest ones, all saying what I mean. The bravest things I've written are the ones you've never seen.
Found your recipe for Thursday soup, written in your careful hand. The measurements are generous, the way you always planned. There's flour on the margins and a coffee ring like a moon. I can hear your kitchen radio playing some forgotten tune. You ironed all the mornings flat before I even woke. You carried weather in your bones and never really spoke. about the weight of holding up a ceiling made of days. You called it ordinary in your extraordinary ways. Dear mother, I should have written sooner, while the language still was warm, before the words grew too polite to match the woman in the storm. I should have said the kitchen smelled like safety, that your hands were my first home. This letter is the longest walk from silence back to bone. I'm learning how to cook your soup. The measurements are wrong. I add too much of everything. The way you'd hum a song, a little more, a little more, until the pot was full. You never followed recipes, you followed something beautiful. Dear mother, I'm writing from your kitchen now, the window slightly cracked. A steam is drawing patterns on the glass. You never tried. I wear your apron sometimes just to feel the cotton's weight. This letter has no ending, because your love was never late. There's a drawer I haven't opened since the snow came down in May. Ribboned envelopes like sleeping birds with nothing left to say. The ink has turned to lavender, the paper soft as skin. I trace the words I folded shut before they could begin. Dear you, wherever rain finds you tonight. Dear you, I still leave the porch light on. These letters live inside a wooden box, but the sentences go on and on. Your name still fits inside my mouth like a song I used to know. I wrote you into every margin, then I let the pages go. The stamps were never torn, the seals were never cracked. I mailed them to the quiet, and the quiet mailed them back. Dear you, wherever the rain finds you tonight, dear you, I still leave the porch light on. These letters live inside a wooden box, but the sentences go on and on. Maybe words were never meant to travel, maybe some were only meant to land softly on the silence between my heart and hand. Dear you, wherever the dawn finds you today, dear you, some things are better left unsent, but I meant them, every single word, every page, every fold, every dent. I left it in the novel you were reading every night, between the pages where the hero finally gets the timing right. Maybe you'll find it in December, need a book, or maybe it will fall like autumn from a shelf you rarely look. If you ever read this, know the ink was almost tears. I wrote it at the kitchen table with the radio of years playing softly in the background, every station set to you. If you ever read this, know that everything was true. I hid another in your suitcase, in the pocket with a pen, knowing you'd go somewhere lovely, and I wouldn't see you then. Perhaps in some hotel in April, sorting through your traveling things, you'll find a folded piece of paper with a woman's offering. If you ever read this, know the ink was almost tears. I wrote it at the kitchen table with the radio of years playing softly in the background, every station set to you. If you ever read this, know Some letters are not meant for mailboxes. They're meant for coat pockets and old shoes, for places where a person goes alone and suddenly receives the strangest news. If you ever read this and the papers turn to gold, know that someone loved you quietly in a way they never told. I scattered these like seeds across the landscape of your days. If you ever read this, smile and let it blow away.
We stood in the hallway like passengers at a gate. You had your keys already turning, and I had words arriving late. The coats were hanging shoulder to shoulder, still touching cloth to cloth, but we had already separated like a table from its tablecloth. The goodbye I never said is louder than the ones I did. It lives beneath the floorboards where we kept the life we hid. I should have held the door frame, should have let the evening stall. The goodbye I never said was the truest one of all. I watched you check the windows the way you always double check. Every lock a little ritual, every latch a small respect. You turn the hallway light off, and I memorize the click, the sound of someone leaving in a house that's growing thick. The goodbye I never said is louder than the ones I did. It lives beneath the floorboards where we kept the life we hid. I should have held the door frame, should have let the evening stall. The goodbye I never said was the truest one of all. There are doors that close like whispers, and doors that close like drums. Ours close like a letter folding back into where it comes from. The goodbye I finally wrote sits in the drawer beside your ring. It says what the hallway couldn't, what the evening couldn't bring. Just this: the house remembers you, the walls still hold your name, and every time I lock the door, I say it like a flame.
I still water the fern you gave me every Sunday like you said. I still buy the bread from 3rd and Main, even though I like the one on Elm. The little rituals you planted took root when you weren't looking. I'm still setting 2 alarms, and I'm still slowly cooking. These are the promises I kept, the ones without a witness, the ones that didn't need a vow, just ordinary stillness. I promised you I'd learn to rest. I promised you the sea. You're gone, but every promise kept is a letter back to me. I walk the long way home on Fridays, past the fountain and the elm. I carry an umbrella now. You'd be proud of that small step. The library book returned on time. The dentist every spring. You'd laugh to know you're leaving. Made me good at everything. These are the promises I kept, the ones without a witness, the ones that didn't need a vow, just ordinary stillness. I promised you I'd learn to rest. I promised you the sea. You're gone, but every promise kept is a letter back to me. Love doesn't always leave in boxes. Sometimes it stays as daily bread, as the habit of a window opened, as the last thing that you said. These are the promises I kept, written into what I do. Every fern I've watered, bread I've bought, is a quiet note to you. I never sent the letter, but I live it day by day. Some promises are better kept than anything I'd say.
I wrote your name in my confession, auto white and proper sheet, then addressed it to a building on a non-existent street. 1430 Someday Avenue, apartment maybe so, A zip code made of wishful thinking, postmarked by the moon. The wrong address, on purpose, darling. Sent it where it couldn't land. A love letter to the universe, in my very best hand. If the mailman reads it, good for him. Maybe he could use the news that someone out there loved you in deliberately wrong shoes. I gave the letter to the ocean once, inside a bottle green. It droply washed up in Portugal, where neither of us has been. I dropped one in a library book on modern French cuisine, hoping some romantic stranger would know just what I mean. Wrong address, on purpose, darling. Sent it where it couldn't land. A love letter to the universe, in my very best hand. If the mailman reads it, good for him. Maybe he could use the news that someone up there loved you in deliberately wrong shoes. There's a freedom in the misdirection, in the stamp that goes nowhere. Every letter I misaddressed was a way of saying I still care, without the risk of you actually being there. Wrong address, I've sent 100 now, to rooftops, rivers, and the rain, to the attic of a lighthouse, to a slow departing train. And if by chance the universe decides to redirect my mail, you'll get a stack of tenderness from a man who loved in Braille.
Dear city of my 20s, with your bridges and your steam, your fire escapes like ladders to 100 different dreams. I learned your streets by heartbreak, your avenues by rain. Every corner was a chapter, every subway was a vein. I'm leaving you a letter on the bench beside the park, where I sat with cheap binoculars and watched the sparrows after dark. To the city, you were my first cathedral, my first rooftop, and my first fall. I'm packing up my winter, but I'll never pack it all. The bodega on the corner knew my order and my mood. The woman with the flowers always wrapped them way too well. I loved your noise, your nonsense, your impossible address. The way you made a stranger feel like one among the best. To the city, on a bench beside the park, where I sat with cheap binoculars and watched the sparrows after dark. To the city, you were my first cathedral, my first rooftop, and my first fall. I'm packing up my winter, but I'll never pack it all. Cities don't read letters, but they hold them in their walls, in the echo of a footstep, in the music of the halls. To the city, I wrote this on the fire escape, the last night I could see.
probably don't remember the Tuesday that I mean, the elevator, the umbrella, the space that fell between. I was the one who didn't hold it. The door, I mean the door. You were carrying the groceries, and I was keeping score. Forgive me not for the obvious, but for the invisible things. The time I didn't listen when your voice had different wings. Forgive me for the Tuesday and the 100 other days when I was in the room, but always looking far away. You've likely built a garden since with someone else's rain. You've probably forgotten what I can't stop trying to explain. But there's a man still standing in an elevator late, holding all the words he should have said before you pressed for aid. Forgive me not for the obvious, but for the invisible things. The time I didn't listen when your voice had different wings. Forgive me for the Tuesday and the 100 other days when I was in the room, but always looking far away. The cruelest things are quiet, a turned shoulder, an absent nod. The small irascibles no one notices except the ones who love to fraud. Forgive me, you'll never read this, and that's probably the grace. Some apologies are candles lit inside an empty space. I'm not asking for an answer, just the right to finally say, forgive me for the smallness of that ordinary day.
I wrote the weather was nice today, but I meant the room felt cold. I wrote I hope you're eating well, but I meant the bed is old. Every sentence had a basement, every period a door. What I typed above the surface was the ceiling, not the floor. Between the lines, that's where I live. In the margins of the set, in the white space after commas, in the pillow of the unsaid. Between the lines, if you hold it to the light, you'll see a second letter written backwards through the night. I wrote the neighbors got a dog, but I meant I hear your laugh. I wrote the cherry blossoms came, but I meant they only last. The ink says one thing clearly, the paper tells another. I chose with care was a shelter and a shutter between the lines. That's where I live, in the margins of the set, in the white space after commas, in the pillow of the unsaid. Between the lines, if you hold it to the light, you'll see a second letter written backwards through the night. We all write two letters, one in ink, one in air. The braver one is invisible, but the truer one is there. Between the lines I hid the real thing, like a key beneath a stone. Every casual observation was a love song on its own. If you ever read my letters, read the spaces in between. That's where I wrote what mattered in a language no one's seen.
You came back on a Thursday with a red stamp like a bruise. The envelope's still perfect, not a single sign of use. My handwriting stared back at me like a face in a hotel mirror. 3 months of travel and the words hadn't gotten any nearer. Return to sender, well that's fair. I wrote it knowing you hadn't moved, but a letter needs a destination, even one that can't be proved. Return to sender, the mailman shrugged, the postmark barely dry. Sometimes you write to be returned, you just don't know the reason why. I poured a drink and read it back, this stranger's desperation. His metaphors too generous, his punctuation patience. He loved you like a Tuesday man, reliable and plain, and you were always Saturday, all perfume and champagne. Return to sender, well that's fair. I wrote it knowing you hadn't moved, but a letter needs a destination, even one that can't be proved. Return to sender, the mailman shrugged, the postmark barely dry. Sometimes you write to be returned, you just don't know the reason why. I'm not hurt, I'm almost grateful for the circle and the close. A letter that comes back to you is a letter that still knows where home is. Return to sender, I'll keep it with the rest, filed under almost alphabetized and pressed. The stamp's still good for something, the envelope's still clean. Return to sender, the most honest thing this pen has ever seen.
lives now, in notebooks, napkins, air, in the steam above my coffee, in the thinning of my hair. This is the last page, darling, not because the love ran dry, but because the ink has earned a gentler place to lie. The last page is not the saddest, it's the one that finally breathes, where the sentences grow shorter and the hand begins to leave. The last page, I'm setting down the pen, not with anger, not with grief, but with the quiet of a garden after autumn takes the leaf. I wrote you through the winters, through the moving and the dust, through the cities that I carried you, like a compass made of trust. And now the paper's almost gone, the margins thin as lace. I have one more thing to tell you, and it needs the smallest space. The last page is not the saddest, it's the one that finally breathes, where the sentences grow shorter and the hand begins to leave. The last page, I'm setting down the pen, not with anger, not with grief, but with the quiet of a garden after autumn takes the leaf. Every letter was a room I built for you inside my chest. Now I'm opening the windows and I'm letting in the rest. The last page, just 3 words left, and they don't need to be clever, they don't need to travel far, they just need to say I'm better, not because you're gone, but because I wrote it all. The last page is the lightest, it's the feather, not the fall.
Letter's done, the stamp is on, the envelope is sealed, but there's a line still on my tongue that hasn't fully healed. So I open up the corner like a surgeon, like a thief, and add the thing I almost lost beneath the folded leaf. P.S. The important part was always at the end, after all the formal trying, after playing grown and pinned. P.S. I still think of you on Wednesdays after rain. P.S. The real letter starts where the other one gave away. P.S. Coffee shop still stands. P.S. I learned guitar. P.S. I kept the photograph, the one beside the jar. P.S. I'm doing fine, but fine as many floors. P.S. The top one has a window, and it still looks out at yours. P.S. The important part was always at the end, after all the formal trying, after playing grown and pinned. P.S. I still think of you on Wednesdays after rain. P.S. The real letter starts where the other one gave way. Every letter needs a postscript, something scribbled, something true, the thing your hand writes when your mind is done reviewing, when the heart takes back the pen and says, wait, one more thing. P.S. This whole album was a letter, 20 pages, 20 songs, 20 ways of saying sorry, 20 ways of getting strong. P.S. If you've listened this far, then you already know the end. The most important thing I wrote, I'd do it all again. P.S.